And so today is week number 6 of our fall series of Sabbath. For the last 5 weeks, we've been working with Wayne Muller's book, Sabbath, which, along with the title, there's a tagline to the book there that says, finding rest, renewal, and delight in our busy lives. We've been given a roadmap to follow that has had various markers along the way, each one giving us ways in which we can incorporate the practice of Sabbath into our days. And these markers, they have shown up as rest and rhythm, time, happiness, and wisdom. And as we have chosen to stop at each one, we've then been taken more deeply into what each one is, the important role each plays in informing who we are and in how we choose to live our lives, and how times of Sabbath can help us integrate them into the creation of a life that has a healthy balance between our doing and our resting. Today is the last week that we'll spend time with another specific aspect or marker of Sabbath. And then next week, we're going to bring our series to a close with what I really feel has such potential to be a very special and a very rich experience. We're going to take everything that we've been offered in the book. For those of you that have been participating in small discussion groups, we're going to take all of that. And then, of course, all of the individual time that I hope each and every one of us has taken to spend with this material. We're going to bring all of that together and co-create a Sabbath day experience together. And I'll say more about that at the end of the service, and just as a reminder, and for the event, some of you might not have been with us last week when it was first shared. But for now, let's keep our focus on our theme for today, which is one that falls under the heading of consecration. Consecration. And I'm going to begin at the end. I do that every so often. Right when the series began, back in mid to late September, I came upon a wonderful musing from a poet and novelist whose name is May Sarton. And it read, "I always forget how important the empty days are, how important it may be sometimes not to expect to produce anything, even a few lines in a journal. A day when one has not pushed oneself to the limit seems a damaging day, a sinful day. Not so, not so. The most valuable thing one can do for the psyche occasionally is to let it rest, wander, live in the changing light of a room." Days spent this way can absolutely be days of great consecration. Days spent in an energy of blessing, of dedication, of commitment, all of which can come forth when we are as empty as possible of all of the demands and the expectations placed upon us by our outer world responsibilities. Okay, so now that we know where we want to end up, let's go back to the beginning of the consecration theme and fill in some of the ways that we can create that kind of emptiness that Miss Sarton wrote about. The same kind of emptiness that Wayne Muller offers can be created not only for an entire day, but also for smaller parts of every day. And the first aspect of consecration that Muller writes about in our reading for this week is that of mindfulness and holiness. In Sabbath, mindfulness is what we are expressing when we slow down, when we make those choices to stop, to be present to the moment at hand. And in the context of consecration, it is a mindset that is focused on those sacred moments in our lives, the sacred experiences, the memories of those blessings that we've received. It's a time when we are present to the moments, to the people, to the details that make up the holiest of experiences we have had. It can also be a time when we are actively engaged with people and creating the details that will make up the newest of our holiest of experiences. And it can be a time when we become present to the energy of holy experiences had by others, which now continue to impact us. So, what are some of the experiences of the past, your past, which you would call holy and sacred? Those that you consecrate every single time you remember them and you spend time with those memories. You know, maybe as a dad, maybe it was when you walked your daughter down her wedding aisle. Or maybe it was the period of time that you cared for an elderly parent as they moved through the end of their earthly life. Or perhaps there are hours upon hours of memories of when you shared the most intimate details of your life with a trusted friend or confidant, and you find yourself being present to how all of that has impacted your life. And you can also ask yourself, when have I been in the presence of consecration, for another? And maybe even more importantly, how can I create a consecration experience now? How can I create a consecration experience now? You're like, when can I next play with my grandchildren? Or what day can I just clear so that I can slowly, lovingly, intentionally prepare a meal and then share it with my spouse or a friend, or maybe take that meal to someone that you know is moving through a difficult time. The sacredness, it always touches the giver as well. We always receive blessings when we offer blessings to another. One of the most holy days of consecration that I can remember intentionally creating for myself was the last day that my dog Michelle spent in this world. She had been going through a pretty rough experience of canine dementia. And just as it does to us humans, it caused a lot of fear and stress and anxiety in her. And this was especially true when I had to leave the home and put her in her kennel in my living room. And so the night before our last day together, after she had dozed off, I dismantled that kennel and I took it out and I threw it away in the dumpster. See, I didn't want her to see it, and I didn't want her to be afraid on her last day with me. And I also knew that space would eventually be where I would place her urn and items that had special meaning. And so when morning came, when she woke up, we went down and we sat on the floor together where that kennel had been. And we blessed that space. We consecrated it. We released all those energies of fear and anxiety, and we replaced them with the energies and with the memories, of all of the love and the joy and the happiness and the silliness that we had had together. It's coming up on 6 years since that morning, and my home, it still continues to be filled with her spirit, filled with her energy. That space is now nothing but a constant reminder of all of the joy that she brought to me. And even to this day, even though she's physically not here anymore, she is still one of the best listeners I have in my life. Sometimes this mindfulness, it brings us to the consecrations made by others and to their blessings that are now ours to receive. And I recently learned of one that has been created over the last 33 years. It's been 33 years since we first held our first church service in our sanctuary. And over these past 33 years, there have been, I have to say, there must have been thousands and thousands of prayers offered in that space. There have been hundreds upon hundreds of people who have offered those prayers. And some, of course, we know. Many are here with us right here today, but many more we've never met. And a week or so ago, during one of my conversations with our congregant, Sharon Chapel, she spoke to me about those prayers. And as you know, Sharon's been moving through a very difficult time, due to her husband Nick's serious health challenge that he's now moving through. And in our conversation, I had asked Sharon if she still felt up to doing the cleaning and the housekeeping at the church that she's been doing for several years now. That I didn't want her to concern herself with that. We could find other means to take care of that, on a temporary basis. But she was very clear and very quick in her response. See, she told me that being at the church and doing that cleaning, it was actually helping her move through all that she's going through right now. She told me that when she's in the building, and especially when she is in the sanctuary, she literally physically feels the energy of the prayers, and it is very powerful for her. For her, being at the church, being mindful of its holiness and present to that energy, left for her by so many others over more than 3 decades. That's bringing her strength that she has told me she knows beyond a doubt she would not otherwise have. And as I've shared with all of you many times of late, both Sharon and Nick could not be more grateful for our prayers, present and past. Another way that Muller speaks to the act of consecration is through making a distinction between seeking and finding. The thought underlying this one is one of trusting that whatever we have is enough. So applying that underlying statement to the seeking and the finding is to let go of seeking out more abundance of whatever form and finding all that you already have and seeing that you already have all that you need. And when we use Sabbath to help us slow down, it stands to reason that it would slow down our tendency to keep on seeking outside of ourselves. Think about what I'll just term, the panic shopping that took place when the pandemic, first came into our experiences, and we knew that it was something pretty important to pay attention to. That seeking nature in some outpictured as hoarding food, hoarding supplies, emptying, clearing out shelves in the stores such that nothing was left for anybody else. How much toilet paper or paper towels or cans of Lysol was really needed for that day or even a full week in your typical household? How much food could be consumed in one household? So using the assumption that these folks bought only for their homes and they didn't take what they had bought and then shared it with anybody else, they had much more than enough. But in their hurry, in their seeking, possibly driven by fear, they couldn't see it. And if we can't see it, we certainly can't consecrate it. Our Sabbath practice, a way to spend one of Miss Sarton's empty days that can help bring us back into balance in this area, is to spend time on retreat. And it doesn't have to be a long time, doesn't need to be a week, doesn't even need to be a day. It can be a half a day, it could be an hour. And the intention for this particular retreat would be that it would be a time for finding. And one of the best kinds of retreats I have experienced for this kind of an intention is one that is silent, a silent retreat. I remember when I was spending so much time out on the grounds at Unity Village when I was in seminary, and how often I would come upon someone walking towards me, and I would see that on a little like an index card tied to a string hanging around their neck, all it said was the word silence. It was a very common sight. And we knew that it meant that that person was experiencing a time of silent retreat, and they would appreciate it if we did not speak to them, not even a hello, just walk past and let them be in their silence. Now, when I take a silent retreat, in addition to not talking, I do not watch television. I do not do anything on my computer. My phone is turned off. I don't seek new engagement of any kind. I open myself to finding what I may have been too busy to see. And doing that every so often has enabled me now to create ways of doing it without having to look at a calendar and block off a particular segment of time, or even to remain in the silence. And I remember doing this for the first time. It was immediately after I graduated from seminary and had received my ordination. I'd spent 3 years in seminary. And for the 3 years prior to that, I was constantly taking classes that were prerequisites to apply to the seminary. So I had been reading books and doing homework and writing research papers and moving through various internships for 6 straight years. And I had no desire to seek out any more of that. So I didn't. What I decided to do instead was to see that as being a time that was now a time for me to find out, to be really present to all that I had already learned and begin incorporating all of that into this new life and livelihood I was now entering. And for me, I know that it helped me to be more present to this new role of minister, more present to the people that I was now beginning to serve and support, and more mindful of how holy and sacred a vocation it is, and how that holiness then began to seep into and encompass every other area of my life as well. And so this week, give some time and thought to both the seeking and the finding that is present in your life. Compare the two, see if there's a difference as to how you feel about one versus the other. Ask yourself, perhaps, which one opened your heart? Which one perhaps brought forth a greater sense of purpose or for fulfillment or pathway for your life? And then see if there's any adjustments that you'd like to make, and use your tools of Sabbath to help you do so. There is a verse in the Gospel of Matthew. It's in the 6th chapter of that book, and it's verse 21. And it says, "Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also." Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. And Wayne Muller shares this verse as a means to help us be mindful of what we possess and what we may be consecrating. And it's not to say that having possessions is wrong. In fact, he goes out of his way very clearly and very plainly stating that's not what this is about. The mindfulness is applicable to the amount of time we spend taking care of the possessions that we have. The point of consideration being, if it takes a lot of time to care for and properly maintain, the things that we own, is there time left to spend with family, to be present to our children, to connect with our neighbors or friends? Is there time left to meditate and pray? Time to offer acts of kindness to another, or to be those agents of change for the things we wish to see changed? Is there time left for us to rest, renew, and delight in our lives? So, of course, this message of balance is front and center again. It has been from the very beginning of this series. But this week, I was struck by a thought of how the balance could actually sometimes come from the possessions themselves. And I think that's especially true for many of you in light of where we live. So we live in a place where there are 4 distinct seasons throughout the year. And that means that we can have all sorts of, I like to call them adult toys, to enjoy all year long. You got the boats and the kayaks and the canoes and the paddle boards. You got snow skis, snowmobiles, snowshoes. You've got running shoes, hiking boots. You got regular bikes, bikes for snow, bikes for wooded trails. All of these things that many people, several of you, own as possessions. And many, if not all, I believe require a decent amount of care and maintenance and upkeep from one year to the next as they are used. Now, some of these very same things might also be that which literally takes you into times spent with family, being present to your kids. Acts of kindness come forth as you share them with friends. Others, on an individual basis, they may transport you into prayerful and meditative states. All of them support your physical fitness, but also your overall well-being. They can be possessions to which you give your time, and possessions that also take you into your heart to who and what you truly treasure more than anything else. Now, of course, I don't think all possessions have this same ability, and I know that these particular possessions and the activities may not resonate with everyone, but we can still take the example that they offer and then look for ways that we might be able to utilize the possessions that do speak to us so that we can more easily create that balance between the time they need from us and the time that they can offer to us. And if all else fails, well, shoot, we have a whole bunch of other practices of Sabbath in our awarenesses now that we can call upon to help us keep a healthy eye on what we own and the impact that any of it can have on our ability to experience the moments of heartfelt consecration that are so important for us not to miss. In the closing to this week's reading, Wayne Muller offers that in Sabbath time, we are valued not for what we have done or accomplished, but simply because we have received the gentle blessing of being miraculously alive. This takes us back to where we began, to the idea of an empty day, of not expecting anything to get done or produced. Actually, it takes us back even further. It takes us back to before I even spoke one word of this lesson for today. It takes us back to the title of the lesson for today, to what Muller calls unflinching uselessness. If you can practice unflinching uselessness, everything else we've covered today is going to be a piece of cake. You see, useless, that word can often take on such a negative tone, can't it? It's useless to try. It's useless to hope. It's useless to get our hopes up or to expect anything. That was a useless waste of time. But oh my goodness, in Sabbath useless, that is heaven. That is heaven. It is to know that nothing is going to get done. Nothing is going to get checked off the to-do list. No goal is going to be realized. Nothing significant is going to be accomplished, and to be okay with all of that. Sabbath uselessness, Muller says, is without measurable value. But what grows out of our uselessness in time are often the things and the experiences that we would call priceless, or even heaven on earth. Those moments when we see the first colors of fall, or we walk along the shore and come upon a perfect stranger and have the most fabulous conversation. The moments when we can actually hear the silence and our hearts open to listen to all that it has to offer. Or those 90-minute drives I used to make from Houston into the Texas Hill Country to walk through the wildflowers with my sons when they were little boys. Moments and the priceless memories that they create, that we create. And so may we all just keep on creating. And through the Sabbath practice of consecration, continue to make and keep those creations holy. God bless you.